Right. Well, it is 5:31, so we'll call the Connected City Advisory Board meeting on April 21st to order. The first thing on the
You should see something that shows that it's being. Oh, yeah. Okay, perfect.
The first thing is to approve the minutes from the last month's meeting. Are there any comments, concerns, issues? Any from you, Commissioner Andrews? Okay, great. Hearing none, then it is approved. And now we have space for open public comment. Any public comment from anyone in the room or online?
It's only one person on the line who I don't recognize.
Brandon is right here.
Hi, Brandon.
Oh, okay.
You are. Yeah, we don't have any members of the public here who aren't on board.
Okay, all right. Then we'll move on to the first agenda item on the presentation of C-Click Fix.
Well, today we have with us Brandon Bayless, who is our asset management specialist over our CityWorks software, but he's now becoming our C-Fix Click Guru in addition, which is our citizen, resident in my words, reporting app for issues. And we have also with us today Scott Fewens, who is over our field operations. So anything that's going out where perhaps dirt or something's getting fixed, corrected, things dug up, you name it. His team, along with Brandon and his team, who also do a lot of GIS work for us, are really important for our operations. So they're here joining Trevor, Melinda, and Kathleen and I tonight, as well as Clint. I just noticed you were sitting there. And Clint is over GIS for our department, but we work with the city together. So we're excited to have him here tonight. And this is something that directly impacts how we provide services to residents. We thought it would be something really good to talk with you guys about. So is that a good enough introduction?
Yeah, no, that was great.
You can tell them like how many credentials you have and all that if you'd like.
Yeah. I just share my screen. There we go. Awesome. All right. So like Melissa said, my name is Brandon Bayless, and I'm one of the supervisors, our tech and asset division within the MSO department. Just going to give you a presentation on some background on C-Click Fix, how it's used, and kind of how we've rolled this out across the city to the public. So jump right into it. So just kind of an overview and a timeline on things. We ended up relaunching C-Click Fix back about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, February 2024.
Had any of you used it previously?
So, yeah.
Prior
I don't know.
I didn't realize it had gone away, honestly.
I'll see, that was the secret sauce that we had.
Right. We had done some revamping of the process and cleanup, and then we officially relaunched it back to the public in February. And this last time we did it in a phased approach. So we kind of released request categories onto the app as some of those request categories were reorganized and discussed internally with staff. So we tried to do a phased approach and as well with an intentional social media posts. So we would roll out something on the app, and then Corey and our communications team would do intentional posts, highlighting what the different request categories would be used for and kind of the purpose of those. And then I'm going to talk a little bit. We have a dedicated page on the city's website as well as a mobile app. So if you haven't downloaded it already, we'll have an opportunity to go through that with the QR code in the presentation. And then, one of the main things we're trying to do is just do ongoing public education and outreach through opportunities like this and throughout the community. So just kind of talking about why we went with this approach and what's the purpose of that. So we wanted to create just a simple way for the public to interact with city services. And have a way of submitting those to city staff. Also, we were using this as a way to develop an efficient and effective process for bringing those requests in, or also educating the public on certain types of processes. And making sure that those requests are routed directly to staff and the appropriate staff. And then trying to prioritize the input from the community. So one of the things that we talk a lot about, just making sure people understand, when someone signs up and is starting to use the app, whether it be on the city's website or on the phone or mobile device, is they're going to have to sign up for a user account. And the main purpose of that, I'm going to go through some of that, is to receive email notifications associated with what they have submitted, and updates along the life cycle of those requests. The other great thing is they can use it on a mobile app, so you can use it on your phone, or you can go to the city's website to sign in and track your requests. In the end, it really gives us the ability to have a 360 degree feedback loop. So if someone sends a request, it gives us the ability to ask follow-up questions and also provide feedback to the requester. So a lot of times somebody may request something, maybe the field crew can't find exactly where it is, or the description that was given maybe wasn't adequate enough. It gives us the ability to follow up with people and get that clarification. So here's an overview of, this is on what's on the city's website. So if you go to the city website and type in /request/services, you'll actually get this page where you can get the opportunity to download the app on your phones. Or again, we have a web portal that you can go to and submit your requests in that way. The other thing is, if you click on view available service categories, you actually get an idea of, what are the request categories that we have out there that you have the ability to submit. So now I'm going to go into kind of the specifics about the two pieces, the mobile app as well as the portal. So that's the symbol of if you look on iOS or Google Play, you'll see this symbol for C-Click Fix. You can also scan that QR code if you wanted to. But this is what's going to show up when you download and create an account. You'll see the City of Lawrence, and you'll be able to go down at the bottom. You'll have the ability to submit new requests. You can view the requests that you've submitted. You can update your profile, and then any notices that we put out through the app, you can also see those as well. And then this is a view of if you were to log into the city's web portal, you'd have the ability to see the current requests that are out there. So you can kind of get an idea of maybe you're submitting a request that someone else has already submitted, or you're wanting to kind of follow. C-Click Fix gives you the ability to follow existing requests, which is also nice. Somebody's already put in an issue that you're wanting to request, you can just follow that request rather than submitting a new one. You can submit pictures, all of that jazz. So kind of just a little bit of background on how we came up with the request categories that are out there. We went through quite a few months of internal conversations about what are the volumes that we're getting of requests internally. So we tried to focus on those that were prioritized of the groups that what was coming into the city and how can we make that more transparent for the public to be able to submit. We wanted to make the request category simple and understandable, easy for folks to understand what they were submitting requests about. One of the nice things is C-Click Fix gives us the ability to ask guided questions. So not just having the categories themselves, but within that, we have questions that can be asked that help guide and answer questions to make sure that the requests and the details are routed to the appropriate staff. And then we also have, there's several request categories that may be seen as high priority or emergency. We can flag those in the system and guide users so they can make a phone call. So since this isn't monitored 24 hours a day, if you're submitting something that's maybe a little bit higher priority or even seen as a potential emergency, we'll actually have the note on there, hey, call this number so that you're not, so that you're actually getting someone who can take your detail. So one of the big things is aligning with, how does this align with the city's strategic plan and the connected city outcome that we have. So, you know, this mainly, we were focusing on two items here, the community engagement aspect, as well as the efficient and effective processes. So again, we tried to come up with something a platform that was transparent, that gives the ability for folks to submit requests associated with regarding infrastructure, as well as, you know, we're giving the 365-degree feedback loop. So if people are submitting their requests, we have the ability to communicate back and forth even after the request is created. And this really leads into the efficient and effective processes. You know, this direct routing of requests to the work groups who handle them makes things just more efficient. Gives us the ability for staff to follow up and ask questions specific to those requests sort of in real time. And it goes on to support the tracking and streamlining of our internal operations. So since we're tracking these requests, we can see how they lead into maybe some of the planned projects that we already have, or maybe help us prioritize those areas that we should be spending our effort. So this last piece, I'm just going to walk through an example of how simple, this is going to be specific to the app, but it's a very similar process on the city's web portal. And just show kind of the process of submitting a request. So if I were to have my phone pulled up, I could open the app, and at the bottom, I click new request. It's going to ask me to either enter an address, or I can find a location on the map. So for this example, I had used one of the inlets that was right outside of our doors here. I just clicked on the map and it selected my location. And then at the bottom, I just click confirm. And this next step gives me the ability to select one of the categories that we have set up in SequentFix. So I chose stormwater inlet blocked, but I could have selected any of those categories. Next, it'll give me the option to take a picture. So if I was out there with my phone and I wanted to take a picture of the issue, I could take one or multiple pictures. In this case, I didn't have a picture, so you can, at the bottom, you can select no picture or no photo. And then it gives the ability to add a description, so I can give sort of a narrative about what the issue actually is. And this is where we have, depending on the request type or category, we have the ability to ask additional questions. So there may be some drop downs. This one just happens to ask if you'd like to give your contact information. You can select yes or no and move on to the next step. And then this last one's kind of an important one, just showing that I could choose to submit this on my own behalf and show that I submitted it. So you can show your identity. So when you sign up for an account through SequentFix, you can give it your name, your email address, your phone number. You can choose to have that posted directly on the SequentFix site on the app. Or I could choose to hide my identity and submit this as anonymous. So I know there's situations where, say, somebody doesn't want to necessarily know that the request was submitted by them, they could do that. Choose that at the top and then select the bottom piece, and that's it. It's as simple as it is.
I just signed it.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. So that's the overview. It's a pretty simple application to use, but again, we wanted to put out something that was transparent, simple for the city community to submit their requests and have their feedback heard.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Can you stop sharing, Catherine?
This is awesome. I wasn't aware of this actually. And you may have said this, but when I'm just trying to think through of like the whole process that happens when someone submits something. Did you say will they receive some sort of email notification, or they just need to go back in through the app and check on the status of their report? Or is there like then a communication loop that gets created somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when a request is submitted, they'll get an initial confirmation email saying, thank you for submitting the request, and it actually gives a little bit of detail. So if you wanted to follow up, you would have that. But you can also go into the app, and once you've submitted a request, it'll show up in my requests in the list.
Okay. And then I think my other question was just, is there like what is there, this is just curiosity, is there like a triage? Like you all see, I know you said there's issues that would be more considered more safety or emergent or whatever, but like I saw some of these requests was like, I looked at my neighborhood and it was like portaloo boo boo and like a porta potty had fallen over. Like, and there was, another one that was like, I don't like the way this tree is. And it just seems like, I mean, we've all hung out on Nextdoor before, right? Like it seems like this could spiral out of control really quickly. Um, I don't know if that's a PC thing to say or not, but like, so is it someone's job to just kind of sit there and like filter through these? What does that process look like on the back end?
So depending on the request type that's submitted, folks do prioritize the issues as they come in. So if they were to see something like that, I think, reading through the request, they may determine, okay, this is maybe a lower priority versus a higher priority. So there's kind of a QA/QC process when something comes in. Staff are getting emails and they're able to sort of make decisions on the fly based on, like you're saying, the priority.
Yeah, it just seems like it could become a space for trolls pretty quickly. I think that's all my question.
And some of the things that you had mentioned, like if a porta potty fell over, we would be able to see, okay, which contractor's working in that area and let them know, because we don't want those to have blown over in wind or whatever could have caused it, so we do follow that up. I think an example would be like if someone put in a traffic, like a sign request, right? A new sign request, it goes through a process. And many times those are compiled and then there's a whole public process required by some of the signs that might even be warranted. So first it would go through and get reviewed by staff to see if it's warranted to change the sign this location. And then before we would put up a sign or remove a sign, there's a public notification for that as well. So it can take a while as it goes through different steps. They can check on the status. And then let's say it was a water main break. And so Scott's team, sees that, they fix the break, they resolve it. Then that would show that it was completed. And they get notification of that. So some things can be resolved within, a day, and other things might be on there for several months. It's some of those longer process items.
Nick, did you have anything else, Katie?
Nope. Thank you.
Nick, did you have anything?
Yeah, is there a follow-up for people who have submitted something? Just say like, sorry, this is obviously a bogus claim, or yes, this has been fixed, or we're gonna get to it in a couple months. Or is it just kind of like, you never hear back?
Yeah, so that's the purpose is depending on, so once somebody submits a request and it's reviewed internally, like Melinda said, it could depend on the type of issue. We try to have a follow-up that describes, okay, this may be fixed the next week, this may be fixed as part of a project in the next 6 months. That way there is some sort of a feedback loop. And then once the request, if it were something that were closed in whatever period of time, they would get a notification saying this request has been completed. Thank you for using the application.
Okay.
And we try to have staff provide feedback and context so that when a request is being closed, you kind of know what the purpose of it is.
Okay, I must have missed that.
So is every request that's submitted, is there a response from staff? So regardless of whether or not it's relevant or I would say appropriate for the platform?
I wouldn't say not necessarily. I think most of the time, if it's a straightforward, like say it's a pothole and we receive it and it's a straightforward request like that, and it's going to be fixed. A lot of times it's just taken care of and then closed and that notification goes out. If it's something that requires a little bit more conversation or a little bit more explanation, I think that's when we try to take advantage of the staff responses. And most of the time we've worked internally, we've worked to say, okay, when you're getting certain types of requests, we'll come up with more of a standardized conversation, like this is what we're telling people in general, if they're submitting requests of this type. That way the message is consistent across whoever's submitting them.
Sorry, I have a follow-up.
Sure.
If, let's say there is, I don't know, someone, I'm looking at an example, but if an individual is wanting is something that's not necessarily directly related to service, let's say like it's like a parking issue where if there's a lot of, not enough, like there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, there's not a crosswalk, so like different, a question that is for a different forum through the city, not necessarily this platform. Does the city go ahead and like connect them to that forum of like, oh, you should talk to your neighborhood association to then make this request to connect the city or something of that sort? Does that happen at all?
Yeah, so we have, I mean, that would be the idea. We have situations where maybe someone submits a request who, we have several external agencies in Lawrence. A lot of times we will either pass that issue on to that agency or say, okay, you can visit this at this email address or a phone number or something. We try not to just sort of say, when you reach out to them, we try to provide a follow-up context to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that answers the
Yeah.
There are some times a request will come through and our response is, this was reviewed, it's not warranted at this time, if the traffic signal timing, they felt that was off, we could say we looked, everything appears correct now, we could educate and say if a fire med vehicle goes through, it throws off the timing until it gets back, so we try to share some of the facts of why it might have looked like that, maybe someone could push the PED buttons, so that changed some of the sequencing and the timing at that particular location. And walk through that. We get a lot of requests, whether it's for, speed humps, traffic control. So then we'll explain the neighborhood traffic management program and you can submit things here, or if you have enforcement concerns, you would report that here. It's important to utilize those tools because then we have all the data collection that says, okay, this is a hot spot. We need to, and that information is available to PD, for instance, on those types of concerns. So we try to point them in the right direction.
That makes sense.
And it's a lot more efficient this way so that we can actually run the data versus the emails, that get sent through.
Thanks for this. I'm glad to see there's a feedback loop too with the user that requests it. I'm wondering, how has equity been taken into consideration with the process? Frequently disadvantaged populations don't trust that if they submit a request or trust the government will be responsive to their needs. So I was looking at the MPO's transportation disadvantage map from 2021. And again, this is very crude. I'm just trying to overlay areas of town that have those characteristics of being disadvantaged and how many service requests are active on the map right now. And unsurprisingly, there's many more service requests in, we'll call them, they're census tracts with fewer disadvantaged populations. So I guess, maybe a combination of outreach or maybe outreach is the clearest cut one, but are there efforts that the city is using to track that sort of metric, if you will?
I could speak on it.
No, it's not tracked. It's not tracked that way. Certainly it's more of what the issue is, what the task is. We're not using it to say how much time did we spend on this part of Lawrence versus the other.
Yeah.
That's taken care of on the long-term stuff. Should it be curb and gutter and things that could be years, right? That's more taken care of through Melinda's side of the world, like when the project actually rolls out. For the day-to-day tasking, it's just metric is how many I work in hours, like this request, I would like to see resolved in this many hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it really isn't tracked by location, by area, if you will.
Yeah.
And I would say that there being a correlation a little bit to that is not surprising because we do find that some of our older infrastructure aligns with our neighborhoods with more disadvantaged populations also. And so a lot of the requests might be associated with the fact that the storm sewer is undersized and it's part of a larger CIP project, but we have that issue of the water line's older. And so there's more water main breaks. And so it's on the plan, but certain parts of town, if the infrastructure is all 5 to 10 years old, you're not gonna see a lot of the same requests come through.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about areas that maybe have aging infrastructure, but a disadvantaged population who they don't know about a program like this, or they aren't submitting requests for any variety of reasons. Is there any level of outreach that's being done to let them know about the program and how it works, or how can we as a body help that effort too?
I would say just your question, which I think is a good one. It's something that we can actually go back and map where the requests are coming from, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
And we would be able to look at that geographic distribution. And perhaps there's some targeted, engagement efforts or communications efforts we could do. So be something for us to follow up on and come back to you guys next month with and show you what we're seeing. And our communications person who was here last time, Michael, sort of was relaying these little foundational elements for setting policy recommendations going forward. I think that might be something that we want to take into consideration because you're right. Certain groups of folks are less likely to engage in certain ways or not to engage at all, which is really what we're talking about here. So absolutely, I think that's something that Brandon's listening to me, Scott's hearing me, Clint's thinking about it. We've got the right people in the room here. And we have those layers in our systems because we use them for things like our ADA right-of-way transition plan and for other transportation related work that we do and for Trevor's lead and copper line replacement programs that we're working on as well. So we definitely lean into those metrics. And I know that as we're doing our work for reviewing CIP, that's another one of those areas that comes up through our strategic plan that percolates into how we put our optics on things. So
Yeah, and again, it was really just crude. I was just trying to figure out like where, census tracts and pulling a city map. And I don't have that data, to be like, oh, there's more service requests in this area or this area.
right.
But if you guys, because you have the layers, you can
Yeah.
look at it. I
And if
guess.
you think of visual issues, I mean, our operations are largely centered on Haskell, so a lot of things Scott or myself or staff are actually basically putting in work orders before they even make it to the system.
Mm.
Which isn't tracked through this.
Yeah.
So that's the other kind of layer. If you look at what we do with See Click Fix versus City Works, which is another one of Brandon's big problem childs that he has. And that's our system that drives our asset management. And that's everything from the work order side to inventory here as we're moving that through. And then also what widgets and things we use out in the field and how much it takes. And Scott is looking at that stuff to make sure that his team is doing the job the way he wants them to do. And Brandon's helping us be able to visualize that and do reporting on it. And so those things all meet kind of in this space, which is awesome.
Yeah, and this is a really important program. I'm really glad to see the city doing it. I know I've talked, when I saw this on the agenda, I was like, oh, curious, because I didn't know about it. And I talked to a neighbor about it. He said he had used it before, I think it was relaunched. And I don't know how many years ago, but the city responded to the service request for a sign or something like a road signal sign that needed to be replaced. So
Yeah, and there's things that in this, as Melinda was indicating, are going to come in and they'll be very easy for us to handle. And I mean, Scott can probably give you, 10 examples off the top of his head, rather rapid fire, what's easy to handle. But there are a lot of things that aren't. And they're larger infrastructure projects. And, depending on what area of town you're in, we probably could rattle off immediately. Oh, yeah, if you put in something on this, yeah, we're 5 years out. Which isn't fun for us to have to say back. And especially when it comes through something like this, where they think it's going to be fixed right away. But those sometimes require longer conversations. We had one today that we were talking about, like, we didn't get the email address with the request. We got, okay, how are we going to respond to this person? What does that look like? And then we've had others that have come in that are like, yeah, this is a complete full depth reconstruction of whatever. And yeah, that's not even in our 5-year CIP. Thanks for sharing. We know it's out there. And those are things that aren't fun to do, but we have a lot of skilled engineering folks that are really good at letting people down slowly. Not for lack of our desire to do it, but lack of funds and time, so.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can see in the request that there's a wide variety of them, like I need this whole sidewalk to be replaced. Versus,
Like a good example, of something routine, it's like street sweeping or something.
Yeah.
So those are ones that often get acknowledged and we're aware of them and we're like, oh, the sweeper's actually in that area in 3 days.
Mhm.
And, so it gets covered, kind of under a rotation of what's going on. Sometimes the potholes are the same way, but then if it's something immediate, like if someone, we got a sanitary sewer issue, you'll see people there that, well, in fact, we'd wish people would call on those.
Mhm.
But then again, if it's like a larger urban gutter, it's like, we may already know about it and it may just be on the funding, fighting for funding for a future project.
I submitted one in 2022 and I got a response in 2 days and it was fixed within 10. But
Yes,
good experience.
and then we took it down right after that.
You killed system.
And that's the other thing is, I don't know if Scott, Brayden and I think maybe both of them touched on this, but we phased the rollback out on this, and I've not been directly involved in this. This has been between Brandon, our teams and city communications, because again, we don't want our brand damaged by putting something out there that you can, click on to have fixed and then nothing happens with it. So internally, from a connected city perspective, when it comes to the things that you guys are over, we have a pretty good handle on if something comes in, you're going to get some sort of follow-up. But other departments don't necessarily have the internal process procedures or infrastructure to handle this as well as the city manager or city commission would like to see. And those are things that we're trying to build upon as we roll through further implementation of City Works, which again plays in with C-Clip Fix, which plays in. So all of these touch points. And one of the big areas I would say that we're getting to now is facilities. And maybe we can talk, since that's under my purview, I don't mind kind of talking through sort of that, where let's say you go into a city facility and you see something that's not working right. The drinking fountain doesn't work. There's a fairly simplistic one. Right now, you can't report that through C-Clip Fix, correct?
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there's
We
a
just
variety
don't-
of them.
right, exactly.
Right, because
Yeah.
we don't have all of our assets documented in facilities. We're just getting ready to start that process, right?
Mhm.
That's what you're meeting on last week, right?
Yeah.
And so until we have that done, some of our migration work out of our old system, which I don't know how heavily they were even in the old system. City, a little bit, moderately.
Yeah.
And then we also don't have like long-term plans for how we're gonna manage and maintain facilities going forward. And that's something that we're working towards. So the first layer is documenting what you have. And then the next steps will be trying to allow for some of these other types of requests that may come in. I don't know how Parks and Rec does it currently, if they have like a broken water fountain at a park.
There's a certain amount of their requests that we do take through sequence.
Now.
Mhm.
Again,
But I think their plan is to expand upon it again, once they've got a better structure of how to handle those coming in.
Right. They're one of our areas that has opportunity to come a long ways in asset management
Mhm.
and then be able to have that more smooth connection between a resident need and response by the city. If that makes sense. So. And then, of course, we do take these in and we're not quite at a year yet.
A little more than a year.
Are we a
So,
little more than it? Well,
Yeah.
from our soft launch, is that what you're?
Yeah.
Was it
we
really last
launched in
summer, I thought?
February.
Okay, it was February. Jesus, it's been that long. But this is a good time to go map stuff
Right.
now and see what we've gotten in, because again, how many of you around the table knew that it was out there and operating?
I
Yes.
downloaded the app today, so.
Yeah, that's a little disheartening.
I just didn't realize on a hiatus.
Right, so I guess, that's right there, that feedback from you all tells me that, the next time I'm meeting with Michael, our communications person who was in here, this is an opportunity to explore this one again, and Scott's cringing over there because he's like, yeah, and I gotta have material to be able to do something with it, staff to be able to go to it. But that's the other thing is that I think we've talked about this, Scott and I've talked about this, but trying to figure out what we can say about how long we will take to get to something. So Scott's got a pretty good handle, but when you throw in a January snowstorm, Scott, what happens?
Yeah. It's on the back burner. But I think, well, I think at least my expectations are, and like Melissa's expectations are, the good news or bad, you get it. Not just we bear, oh man, we're not gonna get.
Yeah,
that.
if
So we
you-
just ignore it.
If you
Good or
don't get
bad, right?
reports on that
Hey,
stuff, how can you fix it?
Yeah, hey, currently, your street's not in the 5-year plan and we have that mapped, you know. That doesn't mean that it can't change. 1 year of throwing a lot of material at it for potholes, that doesn't mean it doesn't change, but just currently, you're not in the 5-year plan. And that tells you where you sit. And we weren't always good at that. We didn't want to deliver the bad news. But I'm asking that we just have honest conversations and you know,
Yeah.
and how that.
Which is
works.
what's really huge for anyone is that when you connect with us, we're able to be as honest as we can be about the timing on some of this stuff. Like, you know, you're looking to have a, you know, big party in May for something and you've got a big old pothole in front of your house and you're like, do I tell everybody to avoid the, you know, large crater?
Right.
Or can I expect that it's gonna be handled? Well, Scott wants to have some surety to be able to tell you, yes, we'll be out there to patch something that size by next Tuesday. And I think for all of us that makes our jobs easier and there's less of those emails coming in that are, you know, grouchy. From snow reporting standpoint, this is not the best for us.
No.
No, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because again, that was something that we struggled with just a little bit in January, because we were getting feedback from many loops. And not all of them worked as well.
Yeah, it's not a great place for your snow removal request. In fact, we don't have it. And so we got all these, we got all these debris, snow became debris. We got all these debris requests. And it took me a while to click, like, what are all these debris requests? Are trees falling down? Like, what, anyway, but no, it was, they weren't able to put in snow. And there's a reason for that. I mean, we have it mapped. We know where we're headed, it's priorities, and we don't have someone dedicated to answer all those things throughout a snow event. In fairness, I need people in seats versus behind screens. So,
Yeah, you need them behind a wheel.
yeah,
That's
so,
right.
yeah, so, yeah, it wasn't great for that. We took care of that, but,
The debris, that's creative. I like it.
yeah, people are very creative when they can't find what they want. And that's that loop, like, that's that, you know, we have a few people that don't love that they have to sign up for an account. We get that from time to time. Why do I have to have an account? It's so when I can't find it, or what is all this debris that, yeah. And again, I don't mind that you're anonymous. I would just like to be able to communicate and say, hey, I can't find this, like, you know. So it's important. It's going well. We are talking about some monthly stakeholder meetings where maybe we put some folks in the room and go, Clint, these are yours. Why are they? We get reports, we get internal reports that say, hey, well, you can get it on the website as well. But this request has been out there 218 days. Depending on what it is, I'm like, there's no way we let that go 218 days. Who's not closing the loop? Because the worst part of that for me is you turned in something that I expect done in 72 hours. And now I'm gonna go close that 218 days later, and you're gonna go, hey, that pothole at the end of my drive got fixed. Well, you knew it a long time ago, and now we look a little silly, you know? We don't want that backlog either. We want that to happen. So I think we're talking about some internal stakeholder meetings that are just, we sit in the room with the folks that are responsible for the requests and say,
Yeah, and that goes back to our strategic plan and its commitments. So one of them is efficient, effective processes, the other sound fiscal stewardship, so, and then our citizen resident engagement component. And if you look at those, that's what we're trying to balance in all of this. And for me, it's just, and Scott, we have a process for a reason. And the reason is to make sure that we are responding to things the way we want to, and that our systems are reflecting the work we've done.
and just good old fashioned accountability. Like, yep, I dropped it. Oops, you know, I think we all can learn from that. So.
And I think it's so important to build that sort of relationship of trust with the community too, and that accountability that says, hey, we're responding to your needs. We've acknowledged it. this is when we can get to it, or no, we can't get to it. I think in that forthrightness and that honesty is so crucial. I think it's really important, and good for you for doing that work. I think it's.
And Scott was the one wanting this thing back. I put it on
I
pause.
missed it. When we had Lawrence listens, several in my group don't love it. I like it. I like it. It's another way that, we don't have people just driving around looking for potholes. I mean, I need it, and it helps us do our jobs, and it really does. So the good with the bad, but
Yeah, I just
think
threatened to
so.
have the app, which scares all of them.
Yes,
So
yes.
They stay right on top of it. They're like, oh God, if that woman has the app, we're in trouble.
Yes.
So,
I like to turn them in anonymously. My boss likes to turn them in anonymously, and you know how long it took me to get a response, I like the app, so.
But it also, then with this stuff, we're also looking for patterns of things as well. So, the mapping of locations, one thing, but the other thing is we are looking for patterns, and that also creates an opportunity for some communications out there that we could do to help people understand better why we do things the way we do them, or why we're not doing them in some cases. I think that's important as well.
Like what kind of patterns?
Well, you could see that in a certain area, like we're constantly getting complaints about speed on the street. Or we're getting complaints about the road is riding rough, but we're not seeing a pothole. Okay, what is it that, what's being experienced? Or somebody says they're standing water. Well, okay, and then 5 other people put it in. Well, there's no leak. We're not seeing a leak in the system. So what's going on there? What's happening? And that gives us an opportunity to follow up and try to track it down further.
We are using that data, that information that comes in, we do try to use that data to make data-driven decisions about where best to put, to put funds towards, street rehabilitation and things like that. I mean, the pothole, actually the pothole response has been great because it helps us direct those funds to those areas of town where, we have a lot more responses. And, we're using that information to help drive, what rehab projects are going to be going on either this summer or long-term projects that would be going on, for the CIP over the next couple of years. So all of that information comes back. It doesn't just go off into a black hole after a project or a request gets completed. We do log that and then go back and look at those, look at the performance of those assets afterwards. So.
And it's always fun to pair it up with, well, yeah, the pavement condition of the street is X. No wonder you're getting people complaining about that. Scott knows those very well, as do many others around the table. So that also helps us understand kind of immediately, well, yeah, we haven't been in that neighborhood yet, and we won't be for a while.
Questions from board members?
Do you have any like KPIs or metrics that you're managing towards, like improving satisfaction or reducing the time for
I
resolution?
hate to say it out loud, but I'm driving from the time you turn a pothole in, it's 72 hours, it's fixed. I'm trying that, and then like, if I can't achieve it, is it staffing? Is it real? Is it like, what is the reason I'm not hitting that? And I'm using that to play the budget game, if you will. Like, I think that's, I would like to get even shorter than that, but yeah, so we're using that. Potholes has really been our focus through City Works. City Works is new to us and reporting that out, just, and then again, hitting the asset management for, okay, let's map where all our potholes are, how much time are we spending? But yeah, that's the big KPI for me and the pothole is I really want a quick response because we weren't always, we stayed in quarters of town, right? And there's a method to that. You don't want to jump to everyone. I mean, that's incredibly inefficient. But I think it's 72 hours if we're running city in 4 quadrants. I think it's entirely doable. So That's one of the examples that we're trying to do. Street sweeping is another. We get a lot of requests for street sweeping. It's hard. We're trying to do the entire city twice in 1 year. If there's a car parked here and we go around it and someone calls the next day or puts a request in the next day, we're probably not going to be back there very soon because we were just there. It's how, I don't have an answer for that one, but that's one of my pet peeves is how do we get back and hit that? I don't even want to get into the notification of before we get there. I mean, is that something as we get into different areas, like, can we share that? That's a little ways off, but that's where I'm at. Is there a notification that, so that I can catch as much of the curb line as I can catch? Not everyone can not park in the street, but at least let people know we're coming. That's something we can do. That's the next metric for me is street sweeping requests. Because it could be 6 months and that's a long time for someone that's.
I would say the KPI question is an interesting one because that's one of the things that's not on our list.
It's an operational.
That's an operational.
Yes.
And that's, and so that's one of the things that is interesting for me here because we have this citywide strategic plan and it has very specific KPIs and we've got a couple that we're focusing on. And Melinda, maybe you want to talk about the one about intersections because it kind of dovetails into stuff that we could see coming in the see, click, fix. And it's something that we're going to be doing a little more intense tracking on, which is intersection service levels. So if I said that correctly, I think I did.
Yes, service level for the intersection itself looks at turning movements. So if I look here, number of signalized intersections with a score of C or above to ease traffic congestion. So level of service similar to a street's level of service, it gets scored, A, B, C, D, with A being the best score, right? And so our goal is C or above, because that would mean that we're not having to wait over a certain amount of time to do a turning movement. And so we've looked at 70, I'm trying to remember the exact number, around 74 to 75 intersections. And out of those, we say, okay, we have this number 42. This has not been updated. That was 42 out of 51, I think, at the time. So 42 out of 51 intersections we studied with our phase 1 had a score of C or above. Now we're more at 60 some out of 75. And so we'll be updating this metric. And that has captured a lot of our signals. I think we have around 105 total. So eventually we'll get to sections and we'll be able to then report on what's the score, for all 105.
And the tie back in here to see, click, fix is if we're getting a complaint and we know that's one of our, I don't know how many that we'd have of those, very few, but, C or above, then we have to figure out what's going on. So that's the type of thing that those reports coming into see, click, fix would cause us to have another question about, okay, what's impacting this? Because it's now impacting one of our performance indicators that we're trying to hold up, which goes back into our resident satisfaction matrix that we track, which is, how satisfied are you with major city streets? How satisfied are you with transportation experience? And that can be driving, walking, or wheeling, or biking. And the other part is just, any kind of ridership, but some of this also ties into our other outcome areas like public safety and how fast, when we were originally looking at this, was how fast can someone respond to an incident, whether it's, an ambulance, a truck, or a police vehicle.
Yeah, we had a PD metric for response time. We had a fire med. We had several metrics, and we're like, really what we're talking about is traffic congestion. And what's a better way to measure that? If we've synchronized, all of our traffic signals and we can quickly move traffic where it needs to go on our arterials, the better. And these scores, we could drill down, but what we're really saying is if it's a C or above, it's in every turning movement at every time of the day we're measuring, which is morning, midday, and evening PM times. So
and those are your peaks.
Yeah, sometimes one maybe got a score of a D on one turning movement on the PM cycle at, 5 o'clock. And that means it is not a C or above at all. So that intersection doesn't rate that high. So what that would mean for us to increase this number, we have to then go back into the data and say, okay, this intersection, it would cost this much to change whatever, add a right turn lane. And so we have to do the benefit cost analysis of, if we do that at this intersection, now we're gonna increase the score for this intersection, but that means we can't fix these 3 other ones. And so what's the trade-off there?
And this goes into 2 things that I think of on our commitment side, which is our sound fiscal stewardship. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But then it goes back to efficient and effective processes. If Scott's getting fix complaints all the time, okay, maybe this is more of an issue than it's showing up for whatever reason. The other part is environmental sustainability. When you look at idle times at intersections, that's a major contributor to, greenhouse gas emissions. So if we're able to have those functioning better, we have less idle time, which is a good thing. So
How does that score account for non-car road users?
This is only for the vehicular traffic. So we have other metrics for some of our, so I think someone had mentioned, the resident satisfaction with, we don't just have driving, we have bus riding experiences, walking, wheeling, biking specifically is a separate one. So then we're measuring it in other ways. We also have, metrics on bikeway completion, sidewalk accessibility. So we capture some of our other components through some of the other KPIs.
But you're not looking at
Not
intersections
for
from
this level.
anybody's perspective, but of vehicles.
For that particular metric, yes, because it ranks so high on the in community survey that the top 3 things that we've seen on the survey for the last 5 years is how can we get across town in an efficient way? And what do we get the complaints on? It's moving the traffic through. So yeah, we have to have KPIs for several different areas and we had to narrow it down. We can't do, a dozen based on pedestrian bike peds, so then we made adjustments.
I have a question about street sweeping. One thing that, and I know we go back to the snow event, but one thing that happened after all the snow in January was debris gets pushed into the bike lanes and then it sits there. And it seems like you were saying that there's maybe a schedule that the sweepers do to go out to every road twice a year. Is there any consideration for snow events and how that could impact that mode of travel?
So obviously the routing is through. The routing is through we start on majors, right? So there are 6 or Iowas or, but that just goes out and we start hitting it, but it's not, if I'm understanding your question correctly. Like it's not based on bike lanes per se. It's just getting the debris off the major streets.
And Scott, do you want to explain? Because I think not everybody understands why we sweep streets, and maybe Trevor needs to jump in on this one.
Yeah, the idea is that we keep it out of the storm sewer. I mean, it's not just a transportation issue. It's to try to keep the
Yeah, I
debris.
mean, that's where that
Yeah.
starts from. So understanding sort of the policy reason as to why we do it, maybe you can explain where that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, street sweeping is a huge metric on the stormwater MS4 permit. We don't want the salt, we don't want the sand in the storm sewer. It gets in the rivers, adds chlorides and salts to the fresh waters. So that's why it's a major focus on stormwater permits, which, some cities literally don't. I mean, we comparatively street sweep a significant amount more than other communities. And we have that documented by our street miles and by our routes. We because you think of, it's not just going down 6th Street once and back, when you're driving it multiple times, to actually get the whole street. It's a lot of miles.
And so, yeah, so he just explained, we do it a lot more than others, getting it done twice a year. Some cities are happy to get it done every other year. I don't know how they get by with it, but it's a very expensive, time intensive operation to do it. So the answer is no, we don't focus it on them from a bikeway standpoint. We're focusing on it from this MS4 compliance standpoint. So
I mean,
I understand what you're saying.
yeah, it just ends up like when snow removal takes place, they push it over into the bike lane, which makes it then dangerous to ride, you know, but. I put in a request for, I ride 19th every day with my kid, and I put in a request and they did right after that big storm. And I don't know if it was just because of the schedule or what, but there was a street sweeper on 19th there shortly thereafter, so. It's great.
That is something to consider. It's just, again, tying those things back into all the various things that we have to look at for cost to provide service. Who gets the service, why we give the service, so.
And there are certain areas we know are prone to maybe get more material, like a cul-de-sac, if the truck's spinning, so if we get a complaint on that, we're usually not typically that surprised. And those are ones that, again, it's not necessarily a bike lane, but it's more an operational challenge sometimes and same with solid waste, getting the trash picked up there. Those are things that supervisors look for out in the fields. When we, have a little bit of something like that, we usually will try to clean up after ourselves if we know it's a self-inflicted challenge.
Yeah, and I mean, I never want my role here to be about my own personal pet projects. I'm just speaking about, my experience with it. And these are arterials, right? Like that I would only ever really bring of concern about street sweeping. It's never.
No, and my job is just to help you understand to do it. I mean, and that's the thing is it's literally to make the streets look pretty. You have a different operational need, which is, well, I use it for non-motorized transportation, which is obviously a higher priority than pretty, right? And then legal requirements from the federal government, or at least we do right now, that has to be taken care of. So.
Yeah. And I didn't know the stormwater component of it, so that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually did know that because one time when I was working at home, I saw a street super pass by my street 5 times. And I called and was like, you guys got it, really, I'm impressed. And they're like, that's from us for like, oh, okay. It's Alabama Street really needed some help, but you did. There's a reason for this. I gotcha. So I learned something.
Any other questions on this one? So the next thing we have up is our next meeting. And I know there was some question about other advisory board items that you would like to talk about. So we can go ahead and do that under the auspice of the next meeting, and then we'll have that as a section for the following the May meeting as well. So
that sounds great. Thank you. I just wanted to bring up that because Allison Oliver is not here tonight, that means she's met that, 4 strikes. You haven't, you're off the board. So I wanted to open it up to everyone. If you have ideas for a board member that you think would like to serve, and to please send them our way. And I'll work with you.
we'll get the process started with the clerk's office.
Yeah.
Governing body.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put it on the agenda because if she was here tonight, it wasn't gonna be an issue.
I had a question.
I want to verify, have all of you received your appointment for the tours?
I'm pretty sure I did. I need to.
What, is it supposed to be an email or?
Yeah, it was an appointment.
Yeah, I think I got a calendar in.
For next week.
Calendar invite.
Yep.
Calendar.
Yep.
For the tour.
Yeah, I received.
Okay. Good.
And I don't know what the weather is looking like for next week. Trevor, is there anything that you would like to share on creature comforts?
I would wear closed toe shoes for sure. The river, Kansas River is a construction site, so basically long pants, closed toe shoes. If you have any PP you want to bring, you're welcome to, but we have hard hats and we have to wear high vis vests and safety glasses for that tour, and gloves as well. If you actually have gloves, that'd be helpful to bring those, because those, once you get assigned, are usually not always the best.
And if it's warm, they're really sweaty.
Yeah. But we will sit in the conference room and kind of do a tour of everything going on. or explanation kind of walk you through everything that we'll go see, because we're gonna be zigging and zagging a few areas just for what's going on. And then we will try to keep that to about 45, 50 minutes, and then about 10 minutes to run over to the water plant. And then we will tour the water plant. Over there, I don't think, well, but I don't think
Going to call.
we're going to call. Yeah, I think we should be good. We have construction starting there shortly, but it's not till July. If it's, there's plenty to see if the weather's somewhat cooperative. But if we're really getting a downpour or something, we might have a few more challenges.
And then for our May meeting, we do have some stuff coming back from our MPO. So do you want to go ahead and go through that just real quick?
So we had listed last month that we were hoping to bring to this meeting the Vision Zero Transportation Safety Action Plan. But we are still waiting for revisions back from the consultants. And so we hope to have that for you at the May meeting. And then we are pushing back the May, which was stormwater equivalent residential unit revisions, the ERU topic. We're going to push that into June.
And we may push that into July because we want to bring a land disturbance permit discussion out of land development code as well.
There's some upcoming topics, but we do kind of shift those based on.
And then I think we can give one update, and probably in a little more detail at our next meeting, but we did have our interviews for our North Lawrence Comprehensive Corridor City, which was the first that I talked about. And we don't have anyone to name precisely yet, but we're getting closer by the moment. And so hopefully for our May meeting, we'll be able to tell you who that is and sort of maybe a little bit more, but it looks like stuff would start midsummer on that. So if you live in North Lawrence, get excited. If you don't live in North Lawrence, get excited anyway, because there's going to be opportunities for everyone to engage in and around this really important corridor for the city. So that one's exciting.
Yeah, as soon as we have a detailed scope of work, if we can get it on a May meeting, it can be public as soon as it posts on an agenda. But if we can't, it'll have to wait for June. And that's the same with the CIP. The CIP is scheduled to go to commission the third meeting in June. And so we may be able to, at the June meeting, share kind of where we're at on that.
But there'll be lots coming up for sure. And then, I mean, if there's anything else that you guys have curiosity out of the tour next Monday that you'd like further follow-up on, we'd love to do that. And go from there. And at some point, we'll probably give you some federal updates as things move through a little differently. We got a call last week about the RAISE grant. That's another thing that you all opined on. Just wanted to let you know that we did get contact from Senator Moran's office asking if this was still what we were looking for, if I was still the contact, and all of that, which was a positive. I felt like, I could be completely wrong, but it felt like it was a positive. And they said they knew Lawrence was hilly and that, yes, we probably do need some money for these ADA projects. So I felt good. There was a lot of Jayhawks in his office.
Great. Do you know anything, like, is there a federal highway contact at this point? Or, I mean, maybe there's not anything to share, but is there like?
No, this is going through a probes at this point. It's whether or not
Okay.
they're gonna authorize funding.
I see, okay.
That's where it's sitting.
Yeah, right
I
before
see.
we submitted the RAISE grant, we had like 3 days to pivot because they came back and said, okay, we're putting it under the build grant and you can't use, any of these words or, so we had to quickly scramble before we submitted and went through and made sure we met all their requirements and didn't have anything that would kick it out. So
Yeah.
we're hopeful.
So given that we're still talking about it, it means that it hasn't completely fallen off a cliff. So that warmed my heart a little bit. I was looking for something to warm my heart and I'm gonna take it and run with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I read the executive orders priorities and I'm just trying to sort through that and how that could affect the city, any grants that we go after, our marriage and birth rates. I mean, I'm just trying to make heads or tails what Secretary Duffy's priorities are.
Yep, we're learning as we go, just like everyone else. So But again, when I was out in DC a couple weeks ago, Melinda was with me and, you know, we felt like the Senate and the House were still trying to function somewhat normally with appropriations and authorizations. They were still interested in hearing about them. So I know that our city manager's out there again last week, maybe over the weekend. He's back tomorrow. But anyway, he was out there and it'll be interesting to see how over a couple weeks, what if anything's changed, but.
Thank you for tracking that.
Yep. We were mostly out there on water stuff. So talking a lot about water in Kansas and trying to make sure it keeps flowing.
Did you get to see the cherry blossoms?
We
We did.
I was there 1 week too late.
It was pretty pretty big out there. And you can't adequately capture it. It's easy to enjoy it. And it does smell good too. Or maybe with combined sewers, you can actually.
Great, and so I just adjourn us. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for the presentation. Katie.
Bye, y'all. Sorry I couldn't be there. I don't want to share my germs.
You feel better.
Don't share 'em.